our founder is a man called George Ballantine, and George is a real entrepreneur and a real visionary. He set up his own grocery store in 1827, but most importantly, he started to import in tea from India. And why that's really important is because George was blending different batches of tea together to create a consistent and high quality product. He was one of the pioneers of the blending process.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Discover series with the Whisky Advisor. I'm Uday Balaji. So today we're going to be talking about the first blended scotch on the Discover series, and we're going to be discovering all things Ballantines with brand ambassador Lewis Anderson. Hey Lewis, how are you? Welcome.
Hey Uday, how are you?
Very, very well. Thank you. It's such a pleasure to see you. But guys, just before we jump into the conversation, please like, subscribe, and hit the little bell so you know every time we have a new video on here. So Lewis, what do you have in your glass today?
Today I have Ballantine's 12.
Oh, lovely. Same here. The bottle is right here. We put that back down and say Slanger.
Slangeva.
So Lewis, I believe you're an engineer who went on to work at a maltings, and I find maltings fascinating places. And then you went on to the hospitality industry, and now you're in brand advocacy. Could you tell us a little more about your journey and also what it's like working at a maltings?
Yeah, it's quite interesting really because my dad and his family, we grew up on a farm, so he was a second generation farmer that would be growing barley that's used for the whiskey industry. So seeing it at its start and growing in that whole process, the harvest and things is really interesting. I actually went traveling off to New Zealand, so I was away for about 5 years in New Zealand, and one of the first questions people ask you when they find out you're from Scotland is, tell me more about Scotch whiskey or what's your favourite Scotch. And so I think Scotsmen are always really patriotic anyway, so we always are, talking about stuff in a great light. And it was kind of from there, whiskey has always been a real sort of passion of mine, but this is one of the first things people would ask me when I was overseas, and it always really stuck in my head. So when I came back from New Zealand, I finished my engineering degree, and my first job was working at a maltings over the harvest period as an engineer. It's really, really fascinating. It's probably a part of the whiskey making process that doesn't get talked about enough. So the maltings was about a mile from my house. Absolutely massive facility, Crisp Maltings in Port Gordon. So again, it's just another fascinating part of the journey, from the barley being grown until it makes its way all the way to the glass in our final whiskey. So it was a great experience, learned a lot about it. I said more about the process and the engineering. And then after my contract was finished there, got a job as a tour guide working at Strathila Distillery, which is the home of Chivas Regal, as you guys will all know. And from there, I discovered about this program to become a brand ambassador for the Chivas brothers. And I was sent out to India in September last year. So I've been in India for about a year and a half, covering Ballantines, and just an absolutely fantastic opportunity, a wonderful country. It definitely is incredible, India. It's every day is an adventure. I always try and tell people it's just no days like the day before, and it's just amazing. So that's probably a little snapshot of the journey that I've taken to become a brand ambassador.
Thank you for sharing, and we're looking forward to having you back in India soon as well. But talking about maltings, I've been to all these different places, like Stillworks and cooperages and all this. But one place that I've never managed to get into is a large-scale industrial maltings. I've seen pictures of a couple, and they're just absolutely fascinating. And it's full-on geekery when somebody visits there.
Yeah.
I just to stop being geeky for a minute, when we do something fun, are you ready for a rapid fire round?
Yeah, fire away.
All right, let's go. What is your first whiskey?
Oh, first whiskey. I think it was a grouse, famous grouse.
What's your favorite bar in the world?
Probably my local back in Fochabers, the Grant Arms.
Oh, lovely. What's your favorite food?
I love Indian food, so all curries is probably one of my favorites.
So you definitely earned some points with the viewers there for saying Indian food. So
Yeah,
1 point right there. What's your favorite sport, Lewis?
football.
What's cats or dogs for you?
Oh, I'm always a dog person, but I've started to grow. I've now got a cat, so I'm starting to, slowly turn over to cats as well. But it'll always be dogs.
Uh-huh. Books or music?
Books. I don't read enough, but I need to start getting back into them.
Beaches or mountains?
Oh, mountains. I'm a very big keen snowboarder, so I would go go up the mountain every day if I could.
So is it coffee or tea for you?
Coffee.
Batman or Superman?
Oh, hands down, Batman. Always going to be the case.
Lovely. So just to close out, what is your favorite whiskey memory of all time, Lewis?
I've got a really special memory for whiskey. I think that there is this misconception that single malts are far superior than blends. And I was one of those people before discovering more about it. So one of the first blended whiskies I ever had was during my training at the Strathiley distillery. If you've ever been to the distillery, you can go into one of the warehouses, into the Chivas cellar, where they have cast strength whiskey of the Chivas Regal range. So I had a Chivas 18 at cast strength. It was like 56%. And it is just hands down one of the best whiskies I've ever tried. And I always go back to the Chivas 18 and Ballantine 17 as when people say blends aren't as good as single malts. I was like, these are the two you have to try, and it completely changes your opinion of that. So that's always one of my special moments. Sort of an epiphany kind of happened. And it's also a very special place to drink whiskey. You can't buy that whiskey anywhere around the world, so you can only drink it at the distillery. And it was one of my favorite tours to do and see everyone, the customers coming in and getting that enjoyment on their faces when they came in.
I really love that you shared that with us because I had a very similar experience. So everybody says, single malts are not always better than blends, cut out the snobbery and all that. But I guess we kind of conditioned it to think that, okay, the single malts are superior because the price points or whatever. But there's one time, it was a few years ago, I went over to a friend's place and, poured myself a Ballantine 17 and wasn't expecting anything. My first sip, and I was like, whoa, I'm really onto something here. Such a nuanced, complex, lovely whiskey, and at a relatively affordable price point given the quality, right? So nowadays, it's just a coincidence that this is a Ballantines episode, but that is the whiskey that I constantly use, and when I do a tasting to show people, it just focus on the liquid. Don't focus too much on all the marketing around a lot of the brands. Focus on the liquid and you'll realize that there's some fabulous blends out there. So thank you so much for sharing that. I had to share my experience as well.
No, 100%. I mean, we'll talk a bit more about the 17 later on, but I always remember doing a tasting for a whiskey event. It was up in Dufton, and there was maybe about 20 people that were there, maybe 25. There was quite a big group. And I distinctively, it was all about going off brand. We were talking about Chivas when I was at Strathiley. So we were trying the 12, the extra, and the 18. And everyone, she was like, I don't like this. You can tell it's a blend. You don't like this. And she tried the 18 and she was just like, that's one of my favorite whiskies that I've ever tried. And again, you just see it. And I've been telling her, I was like, just wait till the last one. The last one, you're going to know a big difference. And it is amazing how many times that happens with those two whiskies. Chivas 18 and Ballantine 17 are, I think, the epitome of that eureka moment.
Mhm. Actually, I had a very similar experience. One of my uncle's partners. So I had gone to visit her in Delhi, and she's like, can you do a little bit of whiskey shopping for me? So I was like, I've got to run, but I'll write a quick list down for you. And one of the whiskeys was the Ballantine 17, and a whole bunch of single malts. She was like, blended whiskey. I can't entertain with blended whiskey. So I was like, okay, fine, it's your choice. About a year later, she attends a Ballantine's tasting and she's texting me, from the tasting. She's like, I just had the Ballantine 17. This is fabulous. I should go and buy it right now. I was like, yeah, never too late, right?
I think we could carry on sharing moments like this for a few hours anyway. It is incredible how often it happens. And I said that misconception that people have, that you're right, it can be a bit snobbery or just the way that the industry has sort of worked before. But there's some fantastic blends out there, and 90% of the sales of whiskey today, Scotch whiskey, are blended whiskey. So it's around everywhere in the world, and there is some really high quality premium good blends out there.
Mhm. I couldn't agree more. But just coming back to Ballantine's history also for a minute. So you see the bottle established 1827, which is a long time ago. And fast forward to now, it's the second best selling Scotch brand in the world. So could you tell us about how this came to be and the journey of the brand over all these decades?
Yeah, definitely. So our founder is a man called George Ballantine, and George is a real entrepreneur, a real visionary, and he's got a really incredible story as well. So George was sent from a rural farming community on the outskirts of the capital city over to Edinburgh to undertake a 5-year apprenticeship to become a licensed grocer. But he was sent away at just the age of 13. I always find this a really amazing fact, that at just 13, he was sent from out in the sticks all the way to the hustle and the bustle of the big city. And it must have been really overwhelming. So he undertook his apprenticeship. After 5 years, he set up his own grocery store in 1827. And as you said, on every bottle of Ballantine's, you'll see up at the top, there'll be a date established 1827. And he opened his store when he was just 19 as well. So again, really young man who wanted to take on the world. But during his time as an apprentice, he was buying in whiskey from around Scotland, exotic herbs and spices from around the world. But most importantly, he started to import in tea from India. And why that's really important is because George was blending different batches of tea together to create a consistent and high quality product that was going out to his customers. So once he opened up his grocery store, he was one of the pioneers of the blending process. Down in his warehouse, he had all these different single malts that he'd been buying in from around Scotland, but the single malts at this time were quite fiery and quite inconsistent. One bottle and one batch would be very different to the next. So what George started to do was blend these different malts together to create a more consistent and palatable whiskey. So he was one of the pioneers of the blending process, and that's, again, where he was a real visionary setting up the brand. A little bit later, in time, he incorporated his sons into the business. And when he eventually retired, he told them to stay true and excellence will always be by your side. Now, I think that's a great quote because it was said over 150 years ago, but it's a motto that the company have embraced. And it's something that's still true to this day in these really difficult and challenging times. So one of the reasons why I love working with Ballantines is because we believe if you stay true to your principles, work hard, success is always going to follow. And as I said, nowadays, Ballantines is the second biggest blend in the world. The number one selling Scotch whiskey in Europe. Is absolutely fantastic. They've got the biggest portfolio of aged whiskies, in the world. So there's always a whiskey there for someone to try, someone to like, just an incredible portfolio and amount of products that they've got available.
Mhm. I love what he said, stay true. And I also love the Indian connection with the tea. I had no idea. So that's a great little connection right there. But talking about blending, so one of the things that people always wonder about when it comes to a blend is like, what are the key malt and grain whiskies that go into it? I'm sure you can't share all of the details, but could you tell us the key whiskies that go into the Ballantines blends?
Yeah, you're right, Uday, that it's a very closely guarded secret. Sandy Hislop won't tell us what he does to make his blends. But if we talk about some of the whiskies that we've got here, for instance, Ballantine's Finest is the entry level for Ballantines. You'll see this, it's in 150 countries around the world, but there's up to 40 different types of single malt and grain whiskey that go into making this blend. But if one particular year, one of those whiskies is no longer in stock, Sandy and his blending team may have to use 3 or 4 different types of whiskey to recreate the flavor profile that one provided. So the recipe for the blend can constantly change, but every time you try it, it's always going to taste the same. And that's what is the really key message about blending, is consistency. The master blenders are always like the guardians of consistency, ensuring that this product will taste the same if you buy it in India today or you buy it in America in 10 years' time. But some of the key single malts that go into Ballantines, we have 3. So we have, they were just released a couple of years ago. We have Glenbergie, which I actually have just here. It is available in India, only in a few states. But the Glenbergie is referred to as the heart of all Ballantines. We have Glen Talkers, referred to as the finish, and Milton Duff, which is the foundation as well. So there are 3 key single malts that we use. The Chivas brothers have 13 distilleries around Scotland, but we will have to buy in other whiskies from across Scotland.
Gotcha. And which is the main grain whiskey that goes into the blend, if I may ask?
Strathclyde would be the main grain distillery that we own. You can find grain whiskey, around the world. I had a really nice bottle of Strathclyde, cast strength again, 13 years old, just exceptional. So I think grain whiskey is getting a bit more of an appreciation. I think that's the best thing about Scotch whiskey right now, is there's lots of innovation that's happening, lots of new products and stuff coming out for people to try. And as I said, these other whiskies are getting a bit more the recognition that they deserve as well.
I look forward to doing a tasting with those single malts and Strathclyde with the Ballantines blend. I'm sure that'll be quite a learning experience in itself. But could you tell us a little more about the other whiskies in the Ballantines range, Lewis, and what's available in India?
Yeah, as I said, we've got the biggest portfolio of aged whiskies around the world. Unfortunately, we only have 6 in India right now, but as time goes on, I'm sure more and more of these are going to start coming out across. So I've got a few products, I said, we can sit and talk about. We've got Ballantine's Finest, as I said, which everyone will probably associate with the Ballantine's brand. Up to 40 whiskies that go into it. I said it's exceptional. Great versatile whiskey. Can be used for anything, whether it's neat, on the rocks, cocktails, mixers. I think it's also important to know that there is no wrong way to enjoy drinking Scotch whiskey. You drink it however you like. So the Finest is a great whiskey for that, because I said it is so versatile. Moving up, we've got the Ballantine's 12, which you've got with you as well. This is actually my favourite Ballantine's in the range that we've got. It's a fantastic step up from the Finest. Minimum of 12 years. Everything about it is a bit more intense. Lovely, creamy, long finish. Lots of fruit that have come in. We get the tropical fruit, orchard fruits. It's just fantastic. And it's Sandy Hislop, our master blender. It's his favourite everyday dram as well. So if it's good enough for Sandy, it's good enough for me. I always have a bottle in my house. I just think it's exceptional. And the last whiskey that I said I'm going to talk about today is Ballantine 17, which I said the world's first 17-year-old blended whiskey, and it's the most award-winning one today as well. In the last 10 years, it's won Blend of the Year 6 times. So incredibly prestigious, award-winning, absolutely fantastic. And as we said, this is always my go-to dram for someone that says blends aren't as good as single malts. What's really interesting about, or what's really good to know that's different about the 17 compared to the earlier variations, is that in the 17, we've got a bit more smoky whiskies have went into the makeup for that. So we are going to get a smoky flavor coming when we try it. It's a great one to try if someone just wants to start trying smoky whiskies. They're just going into that world because it's not really overpowering. Sandy Hislop, as I said, our master blender, has got a great way of describing the 17. And he says the 17 is like Sean Connery when he was playing James Bond. It's very smooth, it's suave. It doesn't have to try very hard, very elegant. It perfectly sums up, Ballantine's from the four corners of Scotland. It's just a truly exceptional dram. And I understand why it's a lot of people's favourite out of our range. Mm-hmm. Should have poured myself a dram with the 17, actually. I'm getting one of the taste of that now. And I have a little sneak peek as well, a little preview. We've just launched this new product around the world, Ballantine 7, finished in bourbon barrels. Hopefully it'll be coming to India in later on this year at some point. Really excited to have this one out here, add to the family that we've got there. It's really, really tasty. One of the first things I did when I came to Scotland was make sure I get my hand on a bottle of this. So because it's finished in the bourbon barrels, what it does is, mature for a minimum of 7 years. And then Sandy's taken all of these blends together, the makeup for that blend, and finished it in bourbon barrels. And it just dials up those toffee apples, the fruitiness, the cream, the caramel. It's really, really tasty. And it's perfect for an old fashioned. It's unbelievable. It's got like the attitude of America, but the depth of Scotch. It's perfect in that respect.
Oh, lovely. I'm looking forward to trying that because I've been seeing a lot of buzz on social media. I've just been waiting for it to come to India. So it's great news that you just shared with us. But apart from the great news, thank you also so much for sharing so much about the Ballantine's brand and the stories, Lewis. But guys, if you want to know more about the brand and get in touch with Lewis, I'm going to put all the details down here as I always do. So please reach out. But Lewis, do you have any parting words for us?
Just want to thank you, Uday, for inviting me on. The chances. Always a hard day at work when you have to sit and talk about whiskey and have a few drams, but someone has to do it. So no, just I said it's an exceptional brand, Ballantine's. The whiskies that we've talked about today is not the whole family. There's a lot more as well that you'll find in duty-free airports, and other places. But they're all exceptional. So thank you for having me on. Just want to wish everyone, stay safe during these trying times and stay true. And, hopefully it won't be too long till we're all in a room and having a dram together at one point. So.
Oh, I look forward to that, and I'll say cheers to that.
Cheers.
Cheers. So guys, that was a lovely conversation with Lewis, and I liked his little, points about the Indian connection, and we're talking about these lovely experiences with the different Ballantine's expressions. But as always, please like, subscribe, and hit the little bell. We'll be back soon with another wonderful blend from the Shivers portfolio. Until next time, cheers.